let's go to look at just one more thing about proper investigation. Like, I think you guys have somewhat exhausted, what you can do as people diving and searching and photographing, because a lot of the reason why you were photographing was to show it to other people like Dr. Carter. Trying to say, hey, if it did happen here, what do we do next? So all that footage is available, I think, to basically give it to professionals to basically look at and get somebody's interest and attention. I'll share one thing to you. I talked with one of the professors, Chicago Field Museum, and he said oftentimes it's the amateurs who find an archaeological site. It's not the professionals. But they come then and tell a professional that, hey, there's something over here. Let's say if it's Native American or someplace, they'll be finding something. But the important thing is not to mess with it because you want it to be in the state that it's in, so that its providence and all those things that need to happen when you find something, an archaeologist can then unfold all that. So let's play this next clip. This is about what to do next, I think, for the investigation. What is necessary is a proper investigation led by trained archaeologists before any further claims can be advanced. The divers and their remote cameras haven't been able to go deeper than about 100 meters, leaving the vast majority of this area unexplored. I wonder what they might discover if they use submarines to investigate the deep caverns on either side of the plateau, where coral cannot grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, submarines.
Yeah.
I like that
idea.
idea.
If you do that, Tim, can I carry the bags?
You can carry the bags, yeah. I don't know. I think I actually have been contacted by people, in the Navy and that said, hey, I'm very interested in doing something with a submarine, and could we raise money? And there's so many things I'm involved with right now. Finding a submarine is not on the list, at top of the list, I can tell you that. But what do you think, Dr. Carter? Would a submarine be pretty fun to take down there? What would you do?
What would I do? I would try to get some multispectral imaging and sonar, something or other, because I would expect a lot of sediment has accumulated over the years, even at that depth. And so I'm not expecting things to be lying on the surface, but a magnetometer, a deep penetrating sonar, maybe you can pick something up, but it would take an awful lot of work. Usually when you're just scanning the seabed, you're looking at large structures, just topography. You're not looking for something this big or even something the size of a person. That's hard.
Yeah. You're looking for shipwrecks or something like that. But
yeah.
I think the thing that we always said was, in fact, Aaron, I remember talking about it when we were out there in 2002 on the boat, about the deep areas down below, what would be down there in, if this event happened there, and I like this location, if the people got swept into the depth, and they were down there at a mile deep, first of all, if it was deeper, would it be more preserved?
No, think of the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
All the people are gone. Any wooden structure is gone. Even the metal's rusting away.
So depth doesn't preserve.
No, burial might preserve it, but then you can't see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's been the fascinating part for me on the burial part. So as far as the depth of it, my imagination is just that what is sort of churned up there. Because if you think about all that water churning and everything, there must have been just clouds of, sand and debris going everywhere. So it would be pretty traumatic. Anyway.
Well, a couple of factors to consider. We're talking about a large number of them, so we're not talking about one or two items, because Josephus numbers the army at 250,000 soldiers. So there should be a lot of wreckage. The other thing is brass or bronze doesn't rust, so that should be well preserved. And of course, if they did have gold jewelry on, there should be a lot of that. That'll be in pristine condition. So there are definite objects that could be searched for, and a lot of them, if that makes sense. So yes, it's a big task, it's a big area, but there are quite a few items to look for. Does that help?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, this is called the Red Sea miracle. That's what we, trying to figure out, what do we call this part of the investigation? And it was a miracle, I believe. And it was so big, I remember saying to Steve Law, my writing partner, I said, we can't finish this in one film. It has to be 2 films. It was 4.5 hours. But let's just look at the question of miracles. We're going to end on that question. So why don't we play this clip here?
It is quite inaccurate to say that a miracle breaks the laws of nature. It doesn't. Indeed, one must believe that nature works according to regular laws before you can notice something that we are quite unaccustomed to seeing. Rule out the supernatural and you will not see miracles.
Yes, the prison that we create for ourselves is thinking that matter and what we see is all that exists.
Just because science doesn't have the explanation doesn't mean that there isn't an explanation. And a logical explanation is it was a miracle, that there is an intelligence outside this universe that helped make that happen.
If I, as an agent, can introduce an unexpected event into nature, then surely God, as the ultimate agent, who's responsible for the laws of nature themselves, is capable of introducing an event which may produce something surprising.
Professor Garrett normally takes a Hebrew approach and doesn't have a problem with spectacular miracles. But when it comes to the parting of the sea, he believes the text emphasizes the work of natural wind, which would require shallow water.
For me, the most important thing is the Bible explicitly says there was a natural cause, and the natural cause was the east wind that blew all night. And so you have to acknowledge that the Bible requires a natural cause. It was not just that the water stood up supernaturally with no physical cause.
Any wind that would have come and performed something like that had to have had some sort of divine guidance. And again, we are very uncomfortable with miracles, with anything that cannot be explained by science. If this is real, if this is true, then it's time that we get comfortable with it.
It was the wind holding the water at bay in a way that it wouldn't ordinarily do, but which it did do because of God's exercising his powers of agency, just as you and I have powers of agency and can affect unexpected changes in physical systems.
Verse 21, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and it was the Lord who drove back by a strong east wind all night and made the sea dry land. Yes, the wind was there. He was using it, and yet the text is clear. Yahweh was at work in pushing back the water.
It's interesting to see how DeMille reflected this thinking with the insights of an old man.
The wind opens the sea!
God opens the sea with the blast of his nostrils.
He was the ultimate mover. He was the decisive agent. The wind was merely instrumental in his hand.
All right, the wind and miracles. So what would you say to people that have questions about God and miracles? Let's just, if you want to just chime in. Aaron, you were an atheist until you heard about this, and something captivated you that these events were true, and it impacted you so much that you became a believer.
Yeah, I think with this discovery and the other discoveries, nothing really natural could explain them. So I started to think along the lines of the Bible must be true, the way it's described, as an act of God or a miracle or whatever. So if ordinary science and archaeology could have explained them away, it really wouldn't have caught my interest at all. But as I spent time subsequently going through all the different options and trying to find out natural answers to various things like this, when nothing would really stick, then you're right. I think God, through these discoveries, proving the miracles which he's performed in the past.
Andrew.
A little bit like Ross, it's not just that Nuweiba site, it's the triangulation of all the points. The Bible accurately describes the sojourn across the Sinai, through the Wadi, through the impenetrable walls on both sides, across to Jabal el-Lawz in Saudi Arabia as the site for the Mount Sinai. It's even if we found nothing at Nuweiba, I would be very happy to say that was it's a miracle crossing. When you triangulate it with all the other clues that we get in the Bible, that is the place that is most likely to me to be the crossing site. And that's why it's so interesting, because we need to go there and look and discover and use what we can today to search in this area, because all the other points on that triangulation tell us that this is the place that God did a miracle.
Ross, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just second what Andrew said. Exactly, that it's the whole Exodus route, from Egypt across the desert through the Wadi. And as Andrew said, as we've said in the past, even if nothing had been found so far, it's still the best candidate far and away for the location. The fact that we do find shapes, now again I'll stress, just seeing a shape doesn't make it the Exodus location, but that is, to me, is confirmation in line with all the other evidence. And what we find there, the shape, and I'll be honest, they're not easy to find. Dive trips have gone there for a week and not spotted anything recognizable. But in my mind, there's been sufficient to just confirm that this is the best location. And it needs a lot more research. That submarine you showed in your little clip there, that's what we need. To go beyond what we can do, scratching the surface as scuba divers, we want to go deeper and see what's out there. A thorough mapping would be fantastic. So keep that fundraising going, and I'll carry the bags too.
Okay, yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys. You are just really lay people. I've coined you the Exodus explorers, you with a few other people, but we need scientists like Dr. Carter, who's actually given his life to science. So it's really basically passing the baton on to people like Dr. Carter. And I know Dr. Carter's committed his life to biblical, the combination of Bible and science. So Dr. Carter, your closing thoughts here.
Well, the question initially was about the wind. Out of the, 7 or 8 possible crossing sites that people have suggested, there's only 1 or 2 where a physical wind could explain it. If it's Nuweiba, then this is a miraculous something by God defying the laws of physics, and it wasn't wind that moved the water. And that's true for most of the possible crossing sites. And yet, when we look at this particular site, I have not seen any compelling evidence that this has to be it. In fact, I haven't seen any really good evidence that this has to be it. One can make biblical arguments that this is a crossing site. That is true. And people have tried to make arguments for other crossing sites also. They're not completely weak. They're not open. No biblical argument, as far as I can see, is perfect. And yet, I think we should not put all our eggs in one basket necessarily. That out of all the other ones, we have to do a systematic exploration of every one of them and eliminate them one at a time, or take strengths and weaknesses for each of the positions one at a time. Because if we find 0 evidence at this place, even after doing submersibles and deep diving and geological coring or whatever, if there's no evidence for that this is the crossing site, well, then maybe we've been talking about the wrong place, and we should have been at least holding the other ones as possibilities and not rejecting them so quickly. Just as a scientist, I'm advising caution and not to draw conclusions yet, because we still don't know an awful lot about most of the potential sites.
Right. Well, there it is. I think what we know is that I believe, and I think we all do, that the events of the Bible are historical. And what we're all trying to do is to find the right a pattern of evidence that confirms those events. And as you know, in my films, I haven't tried to jump to a conclusion. I've been listening to multiple viewpoints. And that's what we've done here today. And so I want to thank you guys for being a part of this, this focus on the Red Sea miracle. And thank you for all the years that you spent diving and, you know, taking some risks doing that. And thank you, Dr. Carter and Creation Ministries International, for being a part of this and looking at the coral. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.